Okay, so I want to share the exact steps of how to stop a thought spiral that have worked for me time and time again that I put into action while I was feeling this way throughout my trip. I, again, have so much evidence and confidence that if you utilize these, they will help you if you are experiencing a negative thought loop or a thought spiral yourself. Welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. In this show, we're getting real about navigating the ups and downs of life together. I'm your host, Erin, and we're ditching the pressure to have it all figured out along the way because honestly, nobody does. We'll explore all things healing, growing, creating, and connecting. And if you deal with anxiety, depression, being a highly sensitive person, or just feeling overwhelmed by life sometimes, I see you, and this show is for you. My intention with these conversations is simple: to leave you feeling empowered, validated, and most importantly, reminded that you are never alone, no matter where you're at on your own journey. Learning that we all have the power to heal genuinely changed my life. And the best part, healing does not have to be complicated. The smallest changes really can make the biggest impact, and it can be joyful, fulfilling, and something that we do together. So join me in getting real about what it means to heal. Thank you for being here, and now let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Ebbs and Flows with Erin, or welcome back to Ebbs and Flows with Erin. Whether you are listening or watching today, I am so grateful to have you here. It has been a minute since I've been recording, as I was in Italy for my 2-week vacation that I have talked about in previous episodes. I had pre-recorded the last 2 episodes before I left, and again, if you've listened, you heard me say that I would be recording an episode in Italy. And while I did take my recording equipment throughout that trip, I posted this on our Instagram stories, but I just felt called to not do any work, to just fully be present, relax, and I was really enjoying that. So I decided to not record an episode in Italy, and I felt great about that decision. On one hand, going there, I thought, how cool would it be to have an episode recorded there? But honestly, I was so happy to just soak up being on vacation and not having to worry about anything. So today I'm going to share a little bit about my trip, and it leads me into a topic that I've been wanting to cover that feels like the perfect time to cover it because it's something that I dealt with throughout my trip. Now, we are currently doing the nervous system regulation series here on the podcast. We've done the first 3 episodes so far, and part 4 will come out next week. I wanted to record this episode while it was all still fresh on my mind following my trip, and part 4 of the series will resume next week, and it's going to be all about meditation. So I'm excited to record that one, but today I wanted to share about my trip and, most importantly, how to stop a negative thought spiral. Those negative thought loops that you can get in, especially if you deal with anxiety, that can kick up the fear, the panic, and intensify any symptoms of anxiety. We're going to talk about how you can stop these thought loops from spiraling and sending you into full-blown panic attack or panic mode, which is much easier said than done. But the more that you practice the things that we're going to talk about today that you can do to stop a negative thought spiral while it's happening or while it's starting, the more naturally it's going to come to you over time when these thoughts come up that maybe once would have sent you into an anxious spiral. You will notice that you are able to ride the wave instead of spiraling in all of the what if thoughts that can very often come with anxiety. That has been my experience, and that is what I want to share about today from my 2 weeks in Italy, because I experienced the most anxiety I've experienced in over a year, maybe even over 2 or 3 years, while I was away in Italy on this dream trip that I have dreamt about for so long that was absolutely beautiful. And don't get me wrong, I had the time of my life, and it was a dream of a trip. That's another thing that I want to emphasize in this episode, is that it is okay to be experiencing something and be absolutely living for it, enjoying it, grateful for it, having the time of your life. But then also you can be having struggles at the same time. You can be struggling with something. You can be challenged by something. 2 things or more than 2 things can be true at once. And for myself, experiencing the anxiety, which I'll get into soon about why I was experiencing this anxiety, I decided there is no way that I'm going to let these feelings stop me from living my best life on this trip or stop me from experiencing things that I came into this trip wanting to experience for so long. There is no way that I'm going to let this stop me. Even if I'm feeling uncomfortable or unpleasant doing certain things or experiencing things on this trip, I'm doing them anyway. So let's start at the beginning. Why was I experiencing anxiety on this trip? As someone who has often and openly talked about on this podcast how I've been able to recover from my generalized anxiety disorder that I was diagnosed with 8 years ago. I came off of Effexor, the SNRI antidepressant, just over a year ago, and anxiety has been something that has not been as prevalent in my life over this past year, 2 to 3 years, after putting a lot of time and effort learning and implementation of tools to support myself, my overall health and wellness, most of all holistically. And while it's true that I've recovered from experiencing my anxiety disorder and having it be a daily challenge for me, which it once was, anxiety still does come up. It's natural and normal for a human being to experience feelings of anxiety from time to time, but anxiety has not come up for me like this, like the way that it did on this trip, for a very, very long time. And it was alarming at times, and this is where I had to put into practice the things that I'm going to share soon in this episode about how to stop a negative thought spiral, essentially how to ride the wave of feeling different sensations in your body, maybe feeling sensations or symptoms of anxiety, riding that wave instead of spiraling in what if, and sending yourself into a full-blown panic attack, which is something that I was not able to do throughout dealing with my anxiety disorder. Spiraling thoughts would send me into intense episodes of anxiety and panic. So I completely understand and empathize with how difficult it can feel and how difficult it can be to get yourself out of a thought spiral or to allow yourself to live life while experiencing thought spirals or feelings of anxiety. I totally get it. And even when you are recovered, quote unquote, or you feel healed, it is likely that this might come up sometime again in your life. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're failing. And this is something I had to remind myself of very often on my trip, was just because I haven't experienced these sensations or anxiety like this in a long time, it doesn't mean that I'm going backwards or that all the progress I've made doesn't count anymore. It's just what it is. It's something that's happening and it's not who I am. But anyways, let's start at the beginning. So we flew into Rome. We spent a day and a half in Rome before taking a train and a car to Puglia, which is on the southern east coast of Italy. We spent 4 days there, and then we took a train and a car over to the Amalfi Coast, the opposite coast of southern Italy. Spent a few days in Praiano there, which is a little fishing village tucked away between Positano and Amalfi, which are the two well-known spots in the Amalfi Coast. And then we spent a few days in Sorrento, which is on the other side of the Amalfi Coast, called the Gulf of Naples. And then we went and took a train back to Rome for our last day before flying out. So we were there for 2 weeks. We were traveling all over the place, all over southern Italy. But when we first got there, we hadn't slept in 32 hours. And we were trying to not allow ourselves to sleep until normal nighttime so that we didn't mess ourselves up going into the trip. But this was a struggle for me, especially. Again, I talk about being a highly sensitive person, and something like lacking that much sleep on top of just being in a whole new place, it was starting to get to me. I could feel myself starting to be a little dysregulated. But at the same time, you've just landed in Italy. I'm thrilled to be there. It doesn't feel like real life. So I'm so excited. So I'm just pushing through, and it's fine. It's whatever. But the next morning, we had to be up pretty early, I think 8 a.m. We were going to tour the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, which, again, so excited about. But Mackenzie and I are walking. It was a 20-minute walk from our hotel. And we're walking, and I can feel as we're walking there, anxiety is starting to really settle in. Symptoms of anxiety, physical sensations, which for me, it typically is the physical sensations that then send me into intrusive thoughts or a thought loop. So yeah, we're walking there and I can start to feel pretty anxious. And again, I'm not really alarmed by this because I know I'm lacking a lot of sleep and I am in a new place that's 8 hours ahead in time from the place that I live in. So I knew that I'd be a little dysregulated. But honestly, the anxiety was real and started getting really in my head because this also happened to me 6 years ago. I went to Greece. And it's kind of like the exact same thing. We had landed, and then the next day we were doing a tour in Athens of the Acropolis. And I was literally walking up to the Acropolis with my best friend, and I felt the sensations of anxiety settling in. And I literally told her, I'm like, I might start crying. Like, I can feel it coming. And I was super anxious. And again, I'm in a place that I've dreamt about. I'm thrilled to be there. Like, there's nothing happening logically for me to feel anxious, but it's just happening. Yeah, so then fast forward to in Italy, the exact same kind of scenarios happening, approaching another wonder of the world, the Colosseum, and I was feeling so anxious. And I had packed a portable little fan in my purse, like at all times on this trip, because one thing for me is when I'm starting to feel sensations of anxiety or just not feeling well, I overheat, and that's like the worst. So I wanted to have this fan at all times so that I could cool down my face, and it came in handy a few times with feeling the sensations I felt throughout this trip. So we're waiting for our tour of the Colosseum, and I'm like fanning my face, just drinking some water, doing some stretches. And then we start walking in with our tour group, and I'm walking into the Colosseum, and I thought to myself, you feel anxious right now? Imagine being a gladiator or like a human, a slave, an animal, any of these people that were forced to like fight in this Colosseum you're about to walk into or forced to be slaves. Imagine being them and you feel anxious on your dream trip in Italy. Not in like a shaming way to myself, but it was kind of more of a snap out of these intrusive thoughts of yours that you're not going to be okay, because you're going to be okay. Throughout the rest of that tour, which was like 2.5 hours, I was fully out of my head and I felt good because I was so thrilled to be on this tour and seeing what I was seeing. And of course, we had a tour guide, so she's like telling us all about the history. And again, for myself, I find when I have a distraction from the sensations, it's easier for me to not get stuck in my head with the intrusive spiraling thoughts. So that happened. We go through the tour and it ends and we just continue to explore Rome. And yeah, I'm feeling still dysregulated and tired, but that was my first feeling of being like dysregulated on the trip. But again, it was something that I wasn't really entirely shocked by. And I was like, okay, historically, after I kind of like acclimate to this new place and the new time zone, I'll start to feel better. But then we wake up the next day and we are taking a car and a train to get to Puglia, Vieste, where Mackenzie's family is from. And on the train, I took Gravol because I know that I get motion sickness. I have my whole life. Anyways, I took Gravol and I'm on the train and I'm starting to get these like episodes of vertigo is the best way I can describe it, where I'd have a sensation in the right side of my chest and it would like shoot up my neck to my eyes. My eyes would go my vision would go kind of blurry and my head would feel weird and I'd feel really dizzy. And I would have to just like close my eyes and breathe. It felt like I was going to pass out. And sometimes, so these episodes continued to happen throughout the trip. Some days they would happen more than others, but at least one episode of this a day happened for the entire rest of the trip. And it was something that I really had to tap into, things that I've shared here that I know to be true. But I was quite alarmed at times, and I start to have intrusive thoughts of, okay, how far away am I from a hospital? How hard would it be to get to a hospital? Am I going to pass out in public? Am I going to throw up in public? And then at some point, the intrusive thoughts, at least for me, start to tell you, you might be losing your mind. What if I lose my mind and go crazy in this public setting? Thinking pretty much all of the worst possible case scenarios. Again, it's the what if, what if, what if, what if. So I had to check myself and again, just ride the wave and tell myself, okay, no matter what happens, in the worst case scenario, if any of those what ifs actually came true, you will be okay. This is where leaning into trust and faith over worry and doubt is a game changer. And we talk about that, I think, in like episode 5 of this podcast. But when you have anxiety, deciding to just trust and have faith, even when it's like the last thing that feels realistic, but just deciding that's what you're going to do and how you're going to think is a game changer, because worrying about the what if, and thinking that things are not going to be okay, in my experience, choosing to maybe feel delusional but think, okay, I'm trusting that it's all working out, trusting that I'm going to be okay, trusting that I'm feeling this for some reason, but my body is always protecting me, my body's always trying to regulate. No matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I can live and experience the things I'm experiencing while feeling uncomfortable. Pretty much just feeding yourself thoughts of safety, because thought spirals are all about having thoughts of fear, what ifs, and fear. And fear is what kicks up more and more anxiety. Also, trying to figure out why things are happening. That is the worst thing you can do, if you ask me. Trying to figure out, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling this sensation? Why am I thinking this thought? Why is this happening to me? How do I stop it? Figuring out the why and the how are just going to kick up even more anxiety, more worry, more overwhelm, more fear, and it's just going to make you feel worse. And trust me, I understand and totally empathize with the fact that in those moments, it feels like the safest thing to do, to be trying to analyze why things are happening, why you're feeling a certain way, and how you can stop it. But again, from my experience, it just makes you feel worse. Anyways, we are going to get into the exact steps of how to stop a thought spiral. But this is what I was experiencing throughout my trip. And finally, we were 5 days away from going home, and we had just gotten to Sorrento. And so a pharmacy was more accessible to me, and we got there and I was like, I'm hitting the pharmacy, because I don't know what's happening to me, but it would be really nice to not be feeling dizzy and or nauseous and or like I'm going to pass out or throw up every so often, every day on my trip. So I go to the pharmacy, I tell her what's happening, and she gave me a package of these like little liquid bottles that had a little powder thing that you like inserted into the liquid, shook it up and took it. And then she gave me another package of powders that you would just put in water. They were pretty much, it was in Italian, so to be fully honest, I actually didn't entirely know what I was taking, but I tried to use Google Translate and like see what was in them, and it looked like just a lot of different vitamins. And so she told me, after 2 days of taking these, you'll probably feel entirely better, but take them for a week. So I did that, and after 2 days, no, I still was having episodes like that, so it didn't really help. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a bad thing for my body to be getting those vitamins in, but it didn't stop the episodes from happening. So I told her, like, I've taken Gravol a few times throughout the week. I took an Ativan to fly there, which I have only ever taken one Ativan before in my life. But I told my doctor, like, I cannot sleep on planes. I've tried over-the-counter sleep medication, and I just want something that will help me to relax on the plane. So she gave me 2 Ativan, one to go there and one to come home. That was nice because I did feel relaxed on the plane, but I didn't sleep. I just am convinced my body cannot sleep on a plane. Unless I am horizontal, I am just unable to sleep. But it's okay, because I told myself, don't stress about sleeping. As long as you're relaxed, you are fine on this plane. And I was, so that was fine and well. But then this Italian pharmacist was like, well, taking Ativan is what could lead to you feeling dizzy like this, so that might be it. And then we asked, okay, well, is there something that we could take for the flight home? And then she's like, oh, the best thing you could take is the Ativan that you have. And I'm like, okay, well, this feels a little, I don't know, doesn't make sense, because you just told me that that Ativan could be why I'm feeling this way, but now you're telling me to take the Ativan to go home. Anyways, long story short, actually, it's not a long story short, because I'm telling a long story. I promise we'll get to the steps to stop a thought spiral soon here. But I don't think it was the Ativan that messed me up, because then I took it to come home, and while I have felt like jet-lagged, low energy, kind of out of it since being home, a little bit of sensations of anxiety, but I haven't had any of the vertigo episodes that I was having throughout my trip, so I don't think it was the Ativan. What I honestly think, and I do have an appointment with my doctor coming up this Friday, so I'm going to talk to her about this, but again, I was really trying to tell myself throughout the trip, don't try and spiral in figuring out why this is happening. It doesn't even really matter right now why this is happening. Just let it happen. But yeah, I'm going to talk to her. But I think it could be because the roads, at least in the places that we were in Italy, are so winding. The motion sickness, Mackenzie and I would just have to look out the window and breathe the entire time we were ever in a car or a train. We were just breathing and like trying not to have motion sickness. And I think maybe that just like threw off my equilibrium a bit or threw off the crystals in my ears. I don't know what it was, but I'm thinking that might be it. I don't know. But again, it doesn't really matter why. I knew that if there was something seriously wrong, like something would have progressed and happened at some point already. So whenever one of these episodes would come up, I would tell myself it is safe to feel these sensations. It is safe to feel unpleasant. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean that I'm unsafe. And then looking back and being like, okay, I've experienced this how many times before and I've always ended up being okay. And at least for myself, I've never actually passed out from these sensations. I've never actually thrown up from these sensations. I've never actually had to go to the hospital from these sensations. And even if you have, you always end up being okay. Because if you are alive and here on this day, you've made it through every tough time, unpleasant feeling, anxiety episode, anxiety sensation that you've ever had. So, at least for myself, immediately telling myself feeling uncomfortable doesn't mean that I'm unsafe was really helpful for me. I'd close my eyes, breathe, and just like repeat that to myself. And recovering from anxiety for me, a huge part of it was not allowing anxiety or the sensations that come with it to stop you from doing things. And that doesn't mean that you always have to like go out and do things when you don't feel like it. Listen to your body. If you need to just rest or stay in or skip something to take care of yourself, that is the best thing to do. That is okay. But at a certain point, you know when it's just anxiety symptoms that are holding you back. And the more that you do things feeling the sensations that feel uncomfortable, the more evidence you have to show yourself in the future that it's safe to feel these sensations and it's safe to do life while feeling them. And you will feel more confident going forward when maybe those sensations or those thoughts do start to come up, because you can look back and say, well, I did all of this while feeling those things and I was fine. I made it through and these feelings don't have to stop me from living. So that was a huge help for me throughout the trip as well, because I could be like, okay, maybe this episode is feeling really scary and unpleasant, but look back, how many times have I experienced this and I've made it through each time and I've been okay and I've been able to make it through all the experiences being okay. Even when your brain is telling you the complete opposite. And there were a few dinners where I did get up and go outside and just walk around and unfortunately leave Mackenzie behind because I was like, it's worse to sit here and feel this way, so I'm just gonna go take a little bit of a walk. It's hard to not beat yourself up and be like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I having these intrusive or negative thoughts? Wondering what's wrong with you. But again, in my experience, that only makes you feel worse. Something that I think is not talked about or acknowledged enough is that it is okay and it is so normal to experience both at once. Again, to be absolutely thrilled with what you're experiencing, grateful, joyful, excited about what's happening in your life, and maybe you're struggling with something, or maybe you're feeling unpleasant sensations, or maybe you are having some intrusive thoughts. It's okay, and it's so normal for more than one thing to be true at once. It doesn't have to be so black and white, because your subconscious mind and mental health, they do not care where you are in the world or what's going on in your life. That's why you hear so often from people who achieve fame or wealth that those two things didn't make their life any better, didn't change anything in terms of their happiness or their overall wellness or their mental health, because yeah, your brain and body don't care about that. So you can't beat yourself up about what you're experiencing and when you're experiencing it and why you're experiencing it. You're just a human and your body is always trying to regulate and bring you back into balance. Sometimes we just have to give it that extra help to get it there, especially if you're a highly sensitive person. There are many factors going into why you might be dysregulated. But I was really proud of myself on this trip because in the past, if I would have experienced what I experienced, how often I experienced it throughout this trip that I put so much effort into, that I dreamt of for so long, where I'm literally living a dream, I would have spiraled badly. I would have went into like full-blown panic attacks. And I'm really proud of myself because although I struggled at times, I was able to practice what I've been preaching, which I also told myself, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to put into action the things that I've been sharing with others that have helped me in the past. And I'm able to put them into action now and have even more evidence as to why the things that I'm sharing are important and why they matter and why they're effective because I'm experiencing it for myself. So to wrap up my story of this happening while I was in Italy, I still don't have answers. I was having these episodes up until we left. And again, some days were better, some days were worse, but I didn't allow it to ruin my vacation. And I am going to see my doctor. I have my theories as to maybe what was happening, but most of all, I have so much evidence that I didn't have to listen to the intrusive thought spirals that were creeping into my mind when sensations that were unpleasant or uncomfortable came up. Okay, so I want to share the exact steps of how to stop a thought spiral that have worked for me time and time again that I put into action while I was feeling this way throughout my trip. I, again, have so much evidence and confidence that if you utilize these, they will help you if you are experiencing a negative thought loop or a thought spiral yourself. So let's set the scene. Let's say, for example, you have health anxiety where an unpleasant or uncomfortable feeling comes up and that is what triggers you into having negative thoughts. Or the other way around, you can get into your head with negative thoughts and start to spiral, and then you're feeling sensations in your body while your mind is spiraling. No matter what way the thought spiral comes up for you, these guidelines will be helpful. So let's say you're starting to have those racing, spiraling thoughts. Number one, connect to your breath, because this is going to help you to slow down. And when you are slowing down, that is sending signals of safety to your nervous system, to your mind, to your body. So for myself, the box breaths when feeling heightened anxiety or the physiological sigh are the most effective the most quickly. Breathing in through your nose for 4 seconds, holding for 2, then breathing out for 6 to 8 seconds, holding for 2, and repeating that until you're starting to slow down and feel more calm. Or the physiological sigh, which you're breathing a full breath in, topped by a second sharp inhale, and then releasing all the air from your lungs through your mouth. And while you're doing this breathing, put your hand on your chest or on your thigh, or you're holding the fingers of your other hand, or you're doing some form of tapping, like when I would be on the train or in a restaurant and I'd have one of these episodes, I would tap on the side of my thigh because no one could see that. Or I would be doing the wrist holding, finger holding technique that helps to reset your energy, where you're just going down the line of your fingers and your wrists and holding them while you're breathing. And this part is helpful because it's connecting your breath with your body, with your mind, all to sync up in one to get you out of your head, get you out of the spiraling thoughts. And you might be thinking, well, what if I'm in public and people can tell that something's wrong because I'm breathing deeply or because I have my hand on my chest or I'm tapping on my thigh, blah, blah, blah. I promise you, no one is paying that much attention and no one cares and no one's going to know. So while you're doing this, repeating to yourself in your head or out loud, either way works. It is safe to feel unpleasant feelings. It is safe to feel uncomfortable. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean that I am unsafe. It is safe to live life with uncomfortable feelings. I repeated these sentences to myself probably 300 times throughout my 2 weeks in Italy. And sometimes you have to repeatedly repeat them to yourself. You're not just saying it once and it's snapping you out of it, but repeating to yourself as you're doing some breathing or just becoming more present, repeating these sentences to yourself in your head or out loud. Another one that helps me is saying, instead of worrying about what if, I will ride the wave. And that is one that when I first did my first ever anxiety relief holistic healing work through Dennis Semeniak, I think is how you say his last name, the anxiety guy online, he pointed out replacing what if with ride the wave, and I've just taken that ever since. And one that helps you if you're feeling really tense because you're starting to feel anxious and you're having spiraling thoughts, it is safe to relax into these sensations, consciously trying to picture from the top of your head to your toes, starting with your brain down through your neck, your chest, your arms, your legs, your knees, your feet, picturing your muscles relaxing and melting and really trying to allow them to relax. Because with experiencing anxiety and fear and spiraling thoughts, our muscles and our fascia get so tense, and then we're holding that anxiety in our body. So if we can really consciously try to relax into the sensations, which I used to think was absolutely impossible. Like, are you crazy? Relax into this feeling. It feels like I'm going to die. It feels like I'm going to throw up. It feels like I'm going to pass out. I'm losing my mind. Like, it feels impossible. And I totally get that. As I'm saying all these steps, I, again, totally get that this feels impossible to do sometimes, and it also feels like it's just a lie. But I promise you, the more you try, and let's say maybe the first few times you're trying to go through these steps and you're really struggling because you are spiraling, it's okay. I encourage you to keep trying. The more that you try, the more this will settle in and start to make an impact. Because again, it doesn't have to happen overnight, but I would say that you should gain some relief from practicing these steps immediately throughout experiencing these episodes that would send me into anxious, spiraling thoughts on my trip. I was so tense at one point, and just deciding to be like, okay, I'm relaxing into this. Instead of panicking when I'm feeling these sensations, I'm deciding for these sensations to send me into deeper relaxation. That mental switch does more than you might think that it does. It would help my body to relax, like my shoulders would come down a bit more, my jaw would loosen a little bit more, my stomach would relax a little bit more. It might sound crazy, but it's true. So the next, which we've touched on, is to challenge your thoughts and fact check. We have talked about a bajillion times in this podcast, but your thoughts are not facts, and you do not have to believe them. Our subconscious mind is made up of past conditioning, old conditioning, feeds us thoughts that are not even really our thoughts, and they aren't true. 95% of our thoughts are not factual, and you don't have to listen to them. So even just reminding yourself of that can be comforting when you're having an anxiety episode or spiraling thoughts. You don't have to listen to these thoughts because they're not facts. And there will never be a time that you have 100% pleasant, positive thoughts, but it's more so about choosing which thoughts you're going to give energy to and embrace rather than just like observe and let pass by. So when you're having a thought spiral or you're sinking into a thought spiral, challenging the irrational thoughts that are coming up. Like, for example, for me, when I was again on this vacation in certain locations, feeling these unpleasant sensations, and then I'd have spiraling thoughts about what if I pass out? What if I throw up? What if I need to go to a hospital? What if I'm losing my mind? Okay, well, have I ever passed out from these sensations in the past? No. If I do pass out from these sensations, will I be taken care of? Well, yes, I'm here with my partner. He will take care of me. There are also people all over. I trust that I will be taken care of if I happen to pass out. If I throw up, that's okay. It's okay to throw up. You're not going to die because you throw up. So that's okay. You throw up, that's okay. That's what your body needed to do. If I need to go to the hospital, how hard will it be to get there? Well, there are local people that live here year round. I'm sure there are ways to get to the hospital. I'm sure someone knows how to get to the hospital. Again, I'm here with my partner. He is capable of helping me get to a hospital if in the worst case scenario I need to get to one. And the most irrational, what if I'm losing my mind, and what if I lose my mind in a public setting here? Well, if you lose your mind, you lose your mind, and that is what it is. But something that's really been helpful to me, because that's often when I have struggled with spiraling thoughts, that is one that will come up when anxiety is really bad. Like, am I losing my mind? And my therapist pointed out, people that are genuinely losing their mind aren't typically aware that they're losing their mind. They don't have that thought in the slightest. So if you're thinking or wondering about if you're losing your mind, and you're that hyper aware of what you're experiencing, you're probably not losing your mind. And it's probably just your subconscious trying to keep you safe from what you're feeling. So, fact checking these intrusive thoughts, because usually once you start to fact check yourself, you'll realize that you're much safer and more well off than your brain is trying to tell you with these spiraling thoughts. And the next one, which sounds completely counterintuitive and crazy, to invite the worst case scenario in and to invite the unpleasant sensations to stay with you, and then just carry on with whatever you're doing, telling yourself it is completely fine if the worst case scenario happens. I am completely fine with feeling these unpleasant sensations. These sensations of anxiety are welcome here, which you might be thinking, okay, well then, are you making these sensations and these thoughts happen by putting it out in the universe for them to be happening? But it's actually the opposite effect, where you're taking the power away from wondering if, what if, and fearing what you're feeling or thinking. You're taking the power away from that, which takes away the fear, and instead showing your body and your mind that you are indifferent. You don't care if it feeds you more unpleasant feelings or if it feeds you more unpleasant thoughts. You're sending signals of safety to your body, that no matter what happens, you are good. You know that you're going to be okay, and it's not going to stop you from living your life, which is the last step, which I want to keep emphasizing because I feel really passionately about the fact that anxiety does not have to stop you from living. Spiraling thoughts, negative thoughts, intrusive thoughts, unpleasant sensations of anxiety, the vertigo sensations that I was experiencing, none of these have to or get to stop you from living your life. And the more that you do things with your symptoms, the more evidence you have to prove to yourself that you are able to live life with them, and that it doesn't have to stop you from living life, and that you are much stronger than you think that you are. Your body is stronger than you think that it is. Your mind is stronger than you think that it is, and you can make it through each and every day. Some days you're going to feel better than others. Feeling uncomfortable, feeling unpleasant doesn't have to mean that you're unsafe. And even if something does happen where you end up in a hospital or you end up in an unpleasant situation, trusting that everything's going to be okay because you're here today and you've made it through every day so far. And how much worse would you feel looking back on all the things that you allowed yourself to miss out on doing because of anxiety? Which again, take care of yourself. I'm not saying you have to force yourself to do things all the time, but for example, my trip to Italy, if I would have looked back and let's say I didn't go on our boat tour of the Amalfi Coast because I was having those sensations and intrusive thoughts about what if I get sick out there, what if I pass out on the boat, what if I need a hospital on the boat, blah, 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 blah. If I would have chosen to stay back from the boat tour that I dreamed of going on for years, and I looked back on that, I would have felt so disappointed in myself and so upset. It would have just made me feel worse about myself, and it would have been letting the anxiety and the intrusive spiraling thoughts win, and I would have just felt weaker. And at least for myself, that would be worse for my mental health and my self-image than pushing through and feeling uncomfortable and unpleasant on that trip, but still experiencing these things that I wanted so badly to experience, that have enriched my life because I have experienced them. And don't get me wrong, there were many moments in my head where I was thinking to myself, should I just stay in the hotel room? Should I just tell Mackenzie, like, I'm so sorry, you go, but like, I don't think I can go explore today, or I can't go on this tour, or I can't do this, or I can't do this, or I can't go here. There were many times, yes, that crossed my mind, and that is what my brain was telling me to do, but I knew if I looked back and I had allowed myself to miss out on things that I was so excited to experience because of how I was feeling, when deep down I really knew that I was gonna be fine no matter what, I would have been so upset with myself. Then I would have felt like I was taking a step back, and then I would have felt like I was taking steps backwards from my progress. That would have been so disappointing. One of my girlfriends, she had a good point. I was confiding in her throughout the trip about like these episodes I was struggling with, and she said, when you look back on this trip, you're not going to remember how you felt and what you were struggling with in those episodes. You're going to remember all of the amazing things that you experienced. And that's already true. Like, I don't reflect on that trip and be like, oh, it sucked that I was dealing with these episodes and these feelings. I'm honest that, yes, I had my challenges throughout the trip, but it did not ruin my trip at all. It did not stop me from absolutely living for what I was experiencing in Italy. To be honest, I'm still struggling trying to wrap my head around being back home and not having aperitivo at 4 p.m. and having a siesta in the afternoon and living the beautiful Italian culture. I loved it there. I can't wait to go back one day. I think I kind of veered off the point that I was trying to make, but what I was trying to get to there was that while it will help you to not allow spiraling thoughts or anxiety to stop you from experiencing life, that doesn't mean that you can't have boundaries or take what you need to help yourself while you're experiencing it as well. So while, yes, I didn't let it stop me from experiencing anything, I didn't stay back from or skip anything that I was excited to experience on the trip, I did take the time that I needed to help regulate myself, to try and help myself. So whether it was having an early night or doing some stretching, some yoga, some meditating, some breathing, taking time for that instead of just jumping up and like getting the day going and starting, or staying out really late, or having too many drinks where that was going to hurt me and just make me feel worse. It's okay to still have boundaries and guidelines for supporting yourself. I hope that makes sense, that you can have guidelines and boundaries to support yourself and take what you need, but you also don't want to let experiencing anxiety or unpleasant sensations in your body or spiraling thoughts in your mind to stop you from doing things that bring you joy or experiencing new experiences. For myself as well, I would reflect back on childhood. I literally have a journal entry from like when I was 11 and we had just went on our first family vacation ever. We went to California to see Disneyland and all the things. And I wrote like, when I'm older, I'm going everywhere. Like I need to see the world. And then fast forward to when I was 18, I had the same kind of entry. Like all I know is I need to see the world. Like I need to travel, blah, blah. So when intrusive thoughts would creep in, like worrying about being away from home or being far from a hospital, or if I'm going to pass out, or if I'm going to faint, or if I'm going to throw up, if I'm unsafe to travel because of these sensations I'm having, I would not only go through all of the steps that I just listed to stop a thought spiral, but also just knowing that my inner child, I'm doing things that she dreamed about and would be unable to even fathom that I'm actually doing in real life. That trumps everything, and I don't care what happens to me. I am traveling. I am experiencing new experiences. I am doing the damn thing. I don't care how I feel. Let me pass out in public. Let me throw up in public. Let me lose my mind. I don't care. And sometimes you do have to just almost get like frustrated and not sick of yourself, but sick of all of these intrusive thoughts and worries, and just be like, F it. I don't care what happens, but I'm living my life. I'm taking my dizziness with me. I'm taking my heart palpitations with me. I'm taking my tension with me. I'm taking these intrusive thoughts. I don't care. I am living life. And that's a good place to get to sometimes. So I hope this episode has been valuable to you in some capacity. I wanted to record it now and interrupt the nervous system regulation series so that it was still fresh on my mind since my trip. It's funny because I had this topic on my list of podcast topics to record eventually, but then I got to really put into practice how to stop a thought spiral throughout my trip. So I wanted to share that now while it's fresh on my mind and keep it real, because I know I'm posting on TikTok and Instagram all about being in Italy and it's amazing. And while that's true, I had my struggles too. And again, it's okay to experience both at the same time. I am feeling a little out of it still, a little jet lagged, a little like wishing that my life could just be traveling the world. At this moment, I always struggle coming home from a trip and getting back into reality, because I feel like once you go on a trip or once you travel, especially if you're seeing like a whole different culture, a whole different place in the world, it feels like your eyes have just been opened and it's like, what are we doing here? Why are we living to work and pay our bills? But at the same time, it's that dichotomy, because working and paying my bills and having a job and doing life here is what has allowed me to travel. So it's all these complex feelings. Like I'm grateful to be home in my home and have family and have friends to come home to, but I'm also devastated to leave behind everything I just experienced. Yeah, it's a whole like complex mix of emotions. But most of all, I'm just extremely grateful for the opportunity to be able to travel and be open about the ebbs and the flows of life because it's never black and white. Okay, next week we will have part 4 of the nervous system regulation series where we're going to talk about meditation. And I'm going to be sharing more about Italy, more content from Italy on Instagram and TikTok, so make sure you follow us, saying us, but it's me. Yeah, I am happy to be back talking to you guys, and I look forward to continuing our conversations. As always, if you have any comments or questions, please send me an email or a DM, and I will talk to you guys next week. Sending a lot of love and gratitude. Bye bye.